What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, the Detroit Lions and the Washington football team faced off yesterday in Ford Field, and as we do every single Monday after a Lions game, after either a win, a loss, or a tie, I'm going to be here telling you the recap, my takeaways, kind of going over what happened in the game, the positives, the negatives, and everything in between. So before we get into that though, if you're new to the channel and are enjoying the content, please consider liking the videos and subscribing to the channel. It only takes 2 seconds out of your day to do so, and it helps the channel out so much, and it helps me out so much. So if you could do that, take just those 2 seconds out of your day to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It would help the channel out so much. But with all that being said, let's get into talking about this recap of the Detroit Lions' first home victory in over 12 months. Now, as I said, the Detroit Lions did win yesterday versus the Washington football team. They won by a score of 30-27 with a walk-off field goal by Matt Prater. It was not an easy field goal either. It was, I believe, a 59-yard field goal where Matt Prater just absolutely bombed it. I mean, there was a little question about it when he first kicked it, but I mean, easy money. I mean, Matt Prater, clutch as any kicker in the NFL. He's definitely had his struggles this year, but if you need a kicker to come up clutch for you, Matt Prater is your guy. He once again won a game for the Detroit Lions, and as I said, that was the first Lions victory since week 8 of last season. So it's been over 12 whole months since we saw a victory at Ford Field, and it finally happened again this year. So, that's kind of an interesting thing to take into account when, viewing this Lions team. I want to make this very clear in the beginning. This was not a pretty game by the Detroit Lions. I mean, they played a really good first half and a very sloppy second half, but hey, I would rather have a ugly win than a pretty loss. Like, I would rather have an ugly win any day over a loss. And at the end of the day, no matter how ugly the game was, no matter how bad a certain players played, no matter how bad certain decisions were, at the end of the day, the Lions walked out the victors, and they walked out as a 4-5 football team. Now, getting on to some of the statistics, Matt Stafford had a very efficient day through the air. He was 24 for 33 with 276 passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns. As I said, very efficient, very clean. He did hurt his thumb early in the game is something that I noticed. He kind of threw the ball, and I don't know if he pinched something, or I don't know if, something happened on a play before, but, he kind of hurt his thumb. It was wrapped up for a majority of the game, but it didn't seem to slow him down. And today he did have x-rays on it, and it came back, nothing was wrong with it. Nothing was injured, so he is fine. He is good to go. But I didn't think that was important to mention. He did injure the thumb on his throwing hand, but as I said, he taped it, he wrapped it up a little bit, didn't hinder his performance at all, and again had a very efficient day, over 270 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, DeAndre Swift made his first career start yesterday for the Detroit Lions, and he came to impress, as DeAndre Swift had 16 carries for 81 yards, and that might not sound fantastic, but I mean, if you watched the game, you would know DeAndre Swift was the best player on the field that day. You would know that DeAndre Swift was the best player on the field yesterday, as he led the Lions in both rushing, and I believe he was second in receiving on the team, which I will talk about in a minute. Now, Adrian Peterson had an alright day on the ground as well, as he had 4 carries for 21 yards. Kerryon Johnson had 1 carry for 3 yards. I still think we need to get him a little bit more involved, but that did not happen yesterday, so I mean, that's unfortunate, but again, still a very productive day for every running back on the ground. Going over to the receivers, Marvin Jones led the team with 8 receptions for 96 yards and a touchdown. DeAndre Swift was second on the team with 5 receptions for 68 yards and a touchdown. Marvin Hall had 2 receptions, but he had 61 yards and a touchdown. I mean, it was very efficient from the wide receivers. They got a lot of separation yesterday. They had a lot of good plays, a lot of good routes. They just seemed like a really good receiving core, and although they continue to have their drop issues, although they continue to drop some footballs from Matt Stafford, overall, I think the receiving core had a very solid day and was a really big reason as to why we were able to sustain drives and put the ball in the end zone as often as we did. The defense did not have a great day. Once again, they gave up 390 yards to Alex Smith on 55 pass attempts. They only gave up 89 yards on the ground in 26 attempts, but they did give up 3 rushing touchdowns, which is not good to see. So, I mean, it was kind of an up and down day. The rushing defense didn't give up any huge plays. They didn't really give up a whole lot on the ground. They did give up 3 touchdowns in the red zone, which you can't afford to do. But as far as the yardage on the ground, they didn't give up that much. But, again, in the air, the pass defense just wasn't great. 390 passing yards is not good. 55 pass attempts for Alex Smith is a lot, so I can understand why they give up a lot of yards. But, overall, the defense played a very poor game, but they played a really, really horrific second half of the football game. The defense didn't have a great day, but the offense was good enough to put up enough points to win the football game. And at the end of the day, as I said, I'd rather walk out with an ugly victory than any type of loss. So, I mean, you could always take that positive away from the game. Now, getting on to the major takeaways from this week. The first takeaway is that Swift is a monster. In his first start, as I said, he had over 149 total scrimmage yards and a touchdown. I mean, you just watch him. He was the best player on the field. He was, being real patient. He showed great patience, good explosiveness, good speed. He hurdled a dude, he trucked a dude, he went around a dude, he broke dude's ankles. Like, DeAndre Swift did everything for the Lions yesterday. He was by far the best player on the field, by far the best player on the team, and he was yesterday's MVP. He does get the game ball for offense. I mean, I don't know what else to say. He was flat out the best player on the field yesterday. 149 scrimmage yards, 1 touchdown. It was a receiving touchdown where he ran a very crispy route, got wide open for Matt Stafford, and, had a nice catch and run into the end zone for an easy touchdown to put the Lions up even farther from the football team. My second takeaway from this game is I actually thought the play calling was pretty good for a majority of the game. Obviously, there were certain plays, certain decisions, certain key moments that I didn't like. Primarily if you were on the live stream with me and JMO, that rollout pass with Matt Stafford where, that was just a poor decision by Darrell Bevell. It was a poor play call. But overall, I didn't think it was a horrible game. The Lions obviously had a couple big touchdowns. I like that they were more aggressive. They took more shots to Marvin Hall and Marvin Jones than I'd seen in weeks past, which I really, really liked. They used DeAndre Swift a lot, and they used him well, which I really liked. I mean, you could just see our offensive line took over, DeAndre Swift took over, and that was a big reason we won this game. Overall, I actually thought this was a pretty good game plan and a pretty good game called by Darrell Bevell. But again, there's still going to be those certain scenarios where he just, I don't know why or what it is, but like something clicks and he's like, oh, well, I want to try this, even though it hasn't worked before. And like, overall on the game, I thought Darrell Bevell called a pretty solid offensive game, but again, there are those key moments, those key situations where Darrell Bevell goes to his biases or he, goes to something that just doesn't seem to work, but Darrell Bevell doesn't realize it in time, and it just doesn't work. Like that rollout pass has never worked with Matt Stafford, and it never will work. It's just not. It's not playing to Matt Stafford's strengths. It's putting him in a bad position. And if, rolling out to one side of the field limits what he can do as a quarterback, and then if they take, if the defense takes that first read away, then you're really, really in trouble because it just, it limits it, right? The play is pretty much constricted to that half of the field. And if the DB can take away that first read, you're pretty much done on that play and you have to throw it away and it's a wasted play. So certain situations, it was really rough, but overall, I didn't mind the play calling and I thought it was actually one of Darrell Bevell's better called games this season, which, isn't saying a lot, but I did think that Darrell Bevell called the game much better than he had in recent weeks. My third takeaway from this game is that the defense might not be a good unit, but this coaching staff makes them look horrendous. I mean, this coaching staff makes them look really, really bad. I say that, and I know people still like Matt Patricia, and I know we just got a victory, but that doesn't change the fact that the defense played poorly, and the coaching staff and the play callers, once again, put this defense in a position to fail. I mean, it was really, really easy to see what the Redskins were going to do. They ran a lot of underneath, they ran a lot of crossing routes, they ran a lot of slants and drags, and a lot of short and intermediate things that go across the middle, and the Lions couldn't stop it because of the way they line up on defense. Their man coverage principles, they just, they get beat by crossing routes. They get beat by routes over the middle, and we saw that over and over and over and over again, and the Lions refuse to make changes. This team has all the talent it needs. This team has a good secondary, a talented secondary. They have a decently talented defensive line. They have okay linebackers. Like, this defense should not be giving up 390 passing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns on a day. This Lions defense has a lot of talent, but the coaching staff is not putting them in the situation to be successful. And until they do, until we get a competent coach that can put them in the right position to succeed, until we can get a play caller that puts our players in the right position and puts them in places where they can play to their strengths, this team has a very, very limited ceiling, and we're going to continue to see them struggle over and over and over again, and we are going to continue to see them be mediocre at best until our play callers put them in until our play callers put them in, really good situations, in situations that play to their strengths. My next takeaway for this game is that I actually thought the pressure was pretty good by the Lions. I know Romeo Okwara got a sack early, and I know Everson Griffin showed up big and got a sack. I actually thought Everson Griffin played a really, really good game. He had a lot of pressures on Alex Smith. He did get one sack during this game, and I mean, he played really well. He had a lot of pressures. He was within inches of swiping that ball out several times, and they need to finish for sure. This Lions pass rush didn't finish very well on Sunday, but they got to Alex Smith. They put some pressure on him. They got some hits on Alex Smith, and it looked a lot better than weeks past. But once again, they just need to finish. They need to wrap up. They need to be composed. When you have the quarterback within your grasp, you don't just need to swipe at the ball. You just tackle him, right? I don't want to say it's not rocket science, but I just feel like our pass rushers get there, they get the pressure, they get in on Alex Smith, or they get in on that quarterback, and for some reason they just end up missing the tackle because they're a little over aggressive, or they just are trying to rip the ball out when they should just be wrapping up. And they got so much pressure and they got so close so many times. I mean, they left probably 4 or 5 sacks on that field yesterday, and although the pressure was there, the sacks and the finishing of the play was not quite there yet. And the defense was better on the defensive line. The pressure improved, as I said, but the Lions still got to focus on finishing those plays. They still got to focus on wrapping up and finishing those sacks. And until we can do that, again, I think that the Lions pass rush has a very limited ceiling until they can fix a few key major issues that they seem to be having every single week. Now, my last takeaway from this game is that the Lions had a lot of depth players step up and have a lot of good plays this game. I mean, they had a lot of depth players stand up. They had a lot of depth players, make plays for them. And I think that speaks a lot to the depth of this team and how talented this team can be from top to bottom. I mean, you had obviously the stars making plays, right? You had Marvin Jones, you had, Marvin Hall, you had DeAndre Swift making plays, you had, the big names, the Romeo Okwara making plays, you had Everson Griffin making plays. You had the big name guys obviously contributing their part, but then you had guys like Austin Bryant who played a really solid game. You have guys like Frank Herron who played a really good game. You guys like Mike Ford who played a really good game. And they're not necessarily the stars of the team, but they're depth players, they're rotational guys, they're role players that all did their role phenomenally. And at the end of the day, every single player on the Lions, a lot of their depth players and a lot of their starters had a really solid game. Austin Bryant had a lot of pass rush snaps where he might not have finished the play, he might not have, got that sack, but he got the pressure, or he forced Alex Smith to throw it a little early. In the first snap of the football game, Austin Bryant throws the offensive tackle into the backfield. He puts him on his butt, and Austin Bryant is free on the quarterback, and I believe Alex Smith got rid of the ball before Austin Bryant could get there. But Austin Bryant had a fantastic game on the defensive line. Mike Ford had a great game in coverage and had a pretty good day in the coverage unit. And then Frank Herron had a couple big knockdowns. He had a couple big batted passes, and I believe he got a couple pressures on the quarterback as well. And those aren't the only 3 guys. Those aren't the only 3 depth players that had good games, but those are the 3 that come to mind for me when I think of who had a good game, who kind of had that standout surprise game. Those 3 players especially had phenomenal games. And again, they're depth players. They're not necessarily the stars. They're not the Marvin Jones, the Kenny Galladays, the Staffords, the Swifts. They're the Mike Fords. They're the Austin Bryants. They're the rotational guys, but those rotational guys made big impacts. And when your rotational players, when your role players can have huge key impacts on a game, that's how you know your depth is good. That's how you know you have a very complete and a very full roster. And I think the Lions do. I think they have a very good, very complete, very talented roster from top to bottom. And, I just think that, with our play callers, if they could put them in a little better positions every week, if they could put our players in positions to succeed versus positions to fail, that is all it's going to take. All it takes, in my opinion, right now is a good play caller to put our players in the best possible positions. And this team is a playoff contender. This team is a 10-6 kind of team. And I truly think that, with a better play caller, with our players being put in better positions, I think that this team's ceiling just shoots up tremendously from a 6-10 team to a 10-6, 11-5 team. And it's not that far away. The Lions are not that far away from being a true competitor and a true contender in the NFC. All it's going to take is a couple key pieces and a couple key changes for this team to take the next step, and for that team to take a couple of steps forward at a time and become and get back to that playoff contender and maybe even a Super Bowl contender one year. With all that being said though, that is all I got for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Have an absolutely fantastic rest of your day. If you're new to the channel, as I said, please consider liking the videos and subscribing to the channel. It only takes 2 seconds out of your day to do so, and it helps the channel out more than you could know. But with all that being said, that is all I got for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If there is Lions news before tomorrow, then I will obviously make a video letting every single person know. But until then, that is all I got for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you all tomorrow with more Lions content. Bye, guys.